about this population and whether this is applicable in your context, right? So, and be able, I guess, to start thinking about, I've looked at both of these courses. What would it mean if I withheld one or the other? Because now I really understand the difference, right? So in service of understanding the difference, I just want to highlight that in those artifacts that you looked at for the integrated, right, students are being asked to pay attention to reference. So this is a kind of close read, right? They're close reading for language and syntax, right? So it is not just what did you understand, what is this book about, right? There's some kind of analysis that's happening. There's attention to word choice, right? Why the author used the word mock and what it means. There's attention to literary language. There are inference questions. And as you said, they're being asked to cite textual evidence, right? In both classes, what's similar is even though the texts are very distinct, and we're looking at a, kindergarten, first grade text, and a third grade text, neither of them is at grade level reading, right? Just to be clear, right? We're not saying put grade level text in front of these kids. Okay, then when we look at the artifacts that we looked at for the standalone for part 2, these are the kinds of tasks that they were being asked to do. Right? I want to highlight that we asked you to look at the foundational, what happens at the foundational center. But there are 3 other centers, right? So this is not all that happens in ELA Part 2. If you look at that framework that I put on your tables, this colorful one, right? You were looking at this center. But you also have independent reading, you have writing, and you have the work that's happening at the guided reading center, right? So at the guided reading center, that's not just working on foundational language. That's also giving kids direct instruction, in their small groups. Here are my 1G readers. I'm sitting down with them, and we're working on both reading and retelling, and then the kinds of skills that they need in order to move through the centers for 1G readers, right? But that includes retelling, inferring, and citing evidence. It doesn't mean they don't use those academic skills, right? And then they take that learning and go to Center 1. You can find it, right? Sorry, they've been at Center 1, there's teaching that goes on, then the kids cycle through. So now at Center 2, there's independent reading. What are they doing there? They're practicing the skills that they learned at Center 1, right? In their own independent reading books at their levels. Right? And part of what we do when we look at the text that we ordered is we kind of curated these texts, not exclusively, but to be, so you can buy text off the rack at ARC, right? That are maybe high interest, low level. But what we did was, as much as we could, curated them so they're aligned to our thematic units and so that they're appropriate for LL Psych, right? Because if I've got, this is sort of the classic one, although kids sometimes love it, but there's a story. They've got a series of potato chip books. And there's a story where there's a little kid in a baby carriage, and our kids are confounded by it. You can't ask them questions about the little, the dog strolling the little baby kid in a baby carriage like that. It's otherworldly. So those are the kinds of things that we try to do when we create.
Especially yours.
Okay, so I'm going to stop here unless there are questions.
Yeah, the same alphabet. Right.
I hope you do ask questions if you are still at all confused or you feel like you don't have kind of clarity around the information. It is a lot of information to take in, and plus some people are wanting to go deeper. What I want you to do today is make a decision, right? And some of you want more information to make that decision, and how do you do this and how do you do that? But I kind of encourage you to sit with what you've got right now. You can always reach out to me and ask questions. There are other people who can answer your questions, like Jen and Rebecca and Kelly and Tina and Dan. But sort of sit with that. Kelly's going to do a little presentation that comes out of her classroom just to talk about it from the ground. Then I'm going to give you information on costs, basic, just so you know what you're dealing with. Because what you need to do if you're not here with an administrator or district level person or the rest of your team, is to go back and decide whether this is right for you, right? And then get in touch with us, and then we can sort of, if you do decide, then we can proceed working together. But like I said before, like there are a couple of teachers here, like, well, I really like it, but it's got to, your school has to say yes, right? It's not just you, because somebody's got to program this, and if they don't understand it, it's not going to happen, right? So anyway, that's my thing. I'm going to give Kelly the floor now. And Kelly, I think I said it before, but she's an amazing teacher at Newcomer. She's been working with us for 5 years and has supported us to make some of the revisions that we made in the curriculum.
I just have a couple things I want to say about like teaching this actually. So the first thing I wanted to say that I didn't put a slide up on, but I've been thinking about all day, is I remember going to my first Bridges training, and no offense to those of you who have given me PD in the past before that, but I remember thinking, this is actually relevant. This is like one of the first PDs I've been to where these are my students that we're talking about. And I feel like if you're sitting here today and you're thinking, these are my students, I need to do this, then Bridges, I would recommend it 100%. If you're thinking that this is not what we have and that some of these people, you don't recognize your students in these vignettes, it probably is not the best idea. But like every training that I've been to in Bridges, I've been like, yes, these are my students, this is who I'm teaching, and this is rigorous, like interesting curriculum for my students. So that's, I guess, what I want to say about that. If you have questions about it, I could like help you, but I'm feeling like you might know. If you know, you know. So these are my students from, I started teaching with Bridges fully 3 years ago. So 3 years ago we had, this is actually 3 grades, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And all the students were new to America and had just arrived and 100% ESL, right? And we were teaching, we had math, science, social studies, and English. I was teaching English and I was also co-teaching social studies, which worked out really well when our class then doubled in size and we had to split, and I took another ESL class. And the other ELA teacher was teaching science. So that's just one way you could do it if your school is completely different from mine. It probably won't work like that. But we were fortunate enough for 1 year to have all 4 classes running. And Lisa Spalding is was the social studies teacher that I worked with 3 years ago. She is now teaching the same students for the 3rd year. So she taught them Bridges, like the 9th graders, she taught them Bridges 9, she taught them for Global 9 after that, and now she's teaching them Global 10. And she, I mean, who has that luck to be able to like have students for 30 years, but she can see what she's teaching in Regent's class is directly related to the social studies. So she's talking about trade routes, and she can bring it back to social studies. So if she were here, she would be recommending it. None of these students have graduated yet because at best they're juniors. So, but many of them are on track for graduation. And that's what I can like plug for. The social studies isn't completely finished yet, and Spalding is working on sort of finessing it, but I did really enjoy that. Do I just touch it? Here, maybe I just tell you. Yeah. So the second year, then I got phased out, and with the student. So now then I moved upstairs in the same building on podcast, but it's the same group of students. So we have at Newcomer Academy, it's the same class that I was teaching 3 years ago, but in a new school. So for the past 2 years, I've been teaching ELA Part 1. So what I'm going to talk about mostly is what ELA Part 1. There are people in my school that are also doing ELA Part 2, and whether it's right or wrong, we're doing ELA Part 2 with the ELA teacher, because then we have 2 teachers in this room, and it just works easier. We also have student teachers, and some of them, the elementary school has iPads, so they have an independent reading station. They were lucky enough to have ESL teacher, ELA teacher, student teacher, and iPads, independent reading. Yeah, that's 5. Because our classes are at capacity at 25, so it's 5 groups right now. But I'm going to talk about ELA Part 1, which is like the main curriculum. And it's supposed to be 4, as you can see, and the names have kind of changed. I just want to tell you like what we've been doing. So part 1 is we've been calling identity. It's now similarity and differences, but it's the same thing. And like as I've been teaching these students, all new to America, 100% up, you have to teach them, my name is, I am from. You have to teach them ABCs, so you guys know that. But the identity does it at a rigorous level, where they're reading the Sion book, wherever Sion is, and Sion is a little girl from Ethiopia, and she's saying, my name is Sion, I am from this is how I got my name. And they are saying the same thing. Yeah, there's Sion. We don't read every page in there, but like we're closely reading the one, and then they're writing a similar page. And by the end, they write a book. And like at parent-teacher conferences this year, one of my students' uncles came in and was like, you wrote a book? Like you've only been in America for 2 months. And there's a page, I mean, it's not an interesting book, but it's like, it's a book. And we can say, now they know the word cover, they know author, they know the parts of the book. And it also has a little bit of their home language too. There's some translanguaging strategies. And it's awesome. It's more interesting than teaching my name is, I am from, because they're talking about this other girl, they're reading, they're talking about the meaning behind it. There's a map of their country, they're looking at maps for possibly the first time. It's very like in-depth, and also they have these books that they're really proud of and that look great. So the first, and then we do a gallery walk where we invite the principal, and everyone's so impressed by their books that they've written. And honestly, that is, I don't know how many lessons it's supposed to be, but it takes us September, 2 periods a day, September to December. And we finished our identity book right before winter break. But they've written a book, and these are people who can't, some of them couldn't hold a pencil when they walked in, so the books vary, but that's the big part. And they're making similarities and differences. They see the similarities and differences between themselves and Sion. We're doing it between each other. We're doing compare and contrast. That's the first part. And then the second part we've been focusing on is human rights. And now it's power. Yeah. But the past 3 years, or 2 years, I've taught human rights now. My students are really into it. And the vocabulary is rigorous, it's difficult. It's participate in government, to the freedom to have a safe life, to thrive, to survive. Those are the key words that they're into. And my students are almost 100% refugee, and they know, 100% of them do know places where there are not human rights. And they all have one human right that they're connected to. And so they're reading about human rights, and we're about to start into Nazarene, so we're about to talk about girls that don't have access to education, but they all know about it, and they're able to speak about human rights in a way that my students were not able to before. I was using Bridges. And I'm not like getting paid for it, but I really do believe that Bridges is appropriate for my students who are LLs. And I think that it is like interesting. It is something they can connect to, and it's something that is rigorous. It's not too easy for them. One of the other things I wanted to say before we finish is, Tina, can you talk about, when we started this program with Tina, I was like, this is a good program, but do you want to say it? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth. These are my students. These are the students that need Bridges.
The real world.
Yeah.
So when I heard about it, I was like, accountability, graduation. Are you kidding? I'm like, no way. The district is on me like this as a principal. And I didn't understand 100% ENLs at an entering or psych level. So what the teachers did is they brought Annie out and said, we want to spend 2 days with you with Annie. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm open to it. And I sat and I was like, wow, this really is our kid. Okay, how can I do this? And I had to make a decision, a very tough decision as a principal. And I had to say, if these were my children, what would I do? And my decision was I wanted the best education for our kids and to help them. And so Annie came on board, and she really worked with me. I went to New York City. We did phone conferences, and I said 100%, let's go for it, everybody, let's do it. We did it in the ELA, Social Studies, Science. You know, it takes buy-in from everyone, and it was a struggle even as an administrator to do that when you have the accountability up here. But at the end result is going to be our children will be productive citizens in the United States, and they will make it. Some won't get out in 4 years, but if they get out in 5 years, they're being successful, they're going to college. I'm willing to take a hit on that. But all my teachers have really bought into it. Well, most. There's always a few that just will not. But that's okay, because the majority of us have, and we are actually, for 2 years, we're really seeing the progress and growth with our kids. In Kansas City, they're actually coming to visit our school. They reached out to us, and you know, I can't take all the credit because I did go to Rochester a couple of times to see what they were doing, and you know, if you're going new into this, find some elbow partners, people who've gone through this before, because it's a very scary and lonely place as an administrator to do this and go out on a limb. Rochester was a wonderful support. We started making connections with Utica, Rochester. Now we're gonna have a partner with Kansas, so if we're all there to help each other, all the children are the same, they're just in a different city. And, yes.
What's the name of the school?
Our school, Newcomer Academy at Lafayette.